Wildfires in California, they have evolved into a year-round concern, taking a toll on farmland and ag production across the state. Many now looking to enhance efforts to mitigate these fire risks. Well, Tony Toso with American Society of Farm Managers and Rural Appraisers joins us now from his region. Tony, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. I understand that you were involved in that 2017 Detweiler fire that damaged over 85,000 acres. Tell us about that experience and what precautions that you take, maybe and other ranchers take now, to mitigate these wildfire risks.
Sure, and thanks for having me back, Suzanne. 2017 is pretty hard to forget. That day started out pretty hot. It was in July. And as I recall, I heard some shooting going off in the distance. Well, that's what was starting the fire, we came to find out later. And later in the afternoon, got the call from my father-in-law. We went down to take a look at it, and about, probably 12 hours later, things had really gotten bad. We had to gather up cattle. We worked into the night. He was cutting fire breaks, he being my father-in-law. I was out weed eating. There's some footage you see from that evening. Bringing cattle back, like I said, trying to get ready for what was coming. And you could see it. It was coming down the hills, going along the ridge lines. That's the CAL FIRE units there you see on the entryway. This is from a fire that we had just this past year. And it's something that you, like I said, you just never will forget. And it took a lot of effort, a lot of work, and it's just something that sits with you. Now, what do we do to try and mitigate that? We graze. We work with different agencies to prescribe burns, that type of thing, to try and mitigate, get that vegetation down, and try to not have these catastrophic wildfires. And it just seems like they come more and more every year here in California.
It really is devastating, and I feel like we're seeing that. And as I said, right in the intro, these are year-round at this point. The impacts, Tony, these fires have on your liability insurance. We know this is a big, big issue for many Californians, and not only your liability insurance, any other costs of doing business in California. Talk about that.
Sure. Well, in addition to those liability costs, which for us have tripled over the last couple of years, we've been canceled by our prior carriers. Now we're on the California Fair Plan. Some of you might have heard about that. It's kind of a last resort provider. It's done by the state, but it's very expensive and it's minimal coverage. So it's just basically on the house, on the barns, that kind of thing. Anything else is not covered there. But I think one of the other big impacts to it is the disruption that it caused. You can see right there. I mean, you're having to buy hay, you're having to move cattle, you're having to fix fences, all the different things that go into that. And it just, boy, it wears you down. So any things that we can do to try and, mitigate that, be prepared for it, we're always making those efforts.
So this basic insurance plan that you have, you said the barn, the house, what about livestock?
No, that doesn't cover that. Typically, that we're looking for, help from FSA and that kind of thing to try and cover the cattle. Fortunately, we didn't suffer any livestock losses, but we replaced a lot of fence in that 2017 fire. So, but that's not to say others don't. I know some neighbors that lost, they thought they had the cattle gathered up and recovered. They broke, and they ended up finding them in a single file line the next morning, deceased. So it's a pretty bad deal. It's everybody's got their story, but boy, when you go through it, it really hits home.
Yeah, it is heartbreaking to hear. Tony, thank you so much. Of course, always wishing you the best. I know you're busy out there. We appreciate you taking the time to join us. Tony Toso with the American Society of Farm Managers and Rural Appraisers.